Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey, if you wanted to ask me any questions about Knowledge for Men or any challenges you currently have and want me to help you break through, then check out my live weekly talks at kfmlive.com, where I share my biggest lessons learned about being the most powerful version of yourself and interact with the Knowledge for Men community live. To attend the next live event, go to kfmlive.com. Again, that's kfmlive.com. Hope to see you there and have a conversation with you. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I'm here with Yuri Elkaim, a New York Times bestselling author and renowned health and fitness expert. He's been known to have a superpower for making healthy and fit simple so people can cut through the noise and confusion out there and finally have clarity about how to improve their health and life. All right, Yuri, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. It's good to be here.
All right, Yuri, let's dive in now with a favorite success quote of yours, or maybe something, some sort of saying that you have that you share with clients or that is very common or popular from your books. What do you got for us, and what does that mean to you?
I'm going to share one that's actually not in my books, but it's from Gandhi, which, I don't know if it's exactly, but I'll paraphrase it. He's basically saying, be the change you wish to see in the world. And for me, that's really important because for me, it's all about being congruent. So if I'm not... Everything I teach and everything I like, who I am in person is really who you see online as well. So it's funny when I meet people for the first time who've seen me online, they're like, wow, it's like you're the same person. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how it works. So for me, that's really important is be the change you wish to see in the world.
Now, are you seeing that it's not like that with other, you don't have to give names, but just other influencers out there who have books or courses, or they're teaching people to do one thing, but they're not that way in their real life? There's some incongruence there with their messaging.
I don't think as a blanket statement, everyone's like that. I think there's going to be people who are the real deal when you meet them in person. There's people who are too cool for school that they're always looking beyond you for someone more important to talk to. That's really annoying, I find.
What do you mean by that? They're looking for someone beyond you.
Like if you've ever been to an event and you meet somebody and you're like, having a conversation with them, but perhaps they feel like they're a little bit higher on the totem pole than you are. And they're looking for someone else that's maybe more important to speak to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's just really being present with who you're speaking with, right? If you're meeting somebody in person, doesn't matter if they're a customer who you've never met in your life or they're like the president of the United States, just be present and be real with them. And I think that's really important. And, it's I don't know if I've found that many. Well, it depends. It's funny because some people have a personality online that is very different in person. Like they're very introverted and they're great behind a computer, but when you meet them in person, you're like, whoa, there's a little bit of a disconnect. And that's no fault of their own. That's just, it's just odd to experience that sometimes, unless you know the person a bit more intimately.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up about the events. I know the feeling. I travel, I go to events all around the country, and I find what works best for me is instead of being, I say this to often even my clients, like instead of being like a machine gunner where you're just trying to blast, your business card and throw it at everyone and have little short, meaningless conversations for 2 minutes with every person, but rather connect with that. Just try and connect with 5 people really deeply, like make 5 solid connections, even if there's 1,000 people at the event. Just 5 really solid connections, get their numbers. You guys know each other's, where you guys live. You guys know how many kids you or whatever you guys have, but beyond just business. And I find that if you're doing this often, you're going out and you're meeting these people, going to these events, like by the end of the year, you've got dozens and dozens of high quality relationships instead of hundreds of who is this person.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's really about going deep and narrow, right? Like you don't need 100 acquaintances. You're better off having 5 really good friends.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally agree with you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how long have you been in this health and fitness space, Yuri?
20 years and online full time for the past 10. So I started off as a trainer, a nutritionist, and then strength coach at the University of Toronto. And then I just got to the point where I was working like 16 hours a day training people and seeing clients. And I was like, there's no way I continue. I want to do this into the future, especially when I have kids. And so that's when I kind of stumbled upon the internet back in 2006. And
it's a good time to get involved in the internet, I'd say.
Yeah. I really had no idea what I was doing for the first couple of years, but thankfully, I've always wanted to just reach a lot of people, and I knew that doing the one-on-one wasn't going to help. And for us, obviously the interwebs has been a terrific platform for helping us get our message out to a lot of people.
Yeah. So you were doing a lot of one-on-one work, and I'm sure that one-on-one work gave you the experience to really spread a message correctly online to a wider audience. Like, you knew their challenges.
Yeah, I think it's a really good advantage that a lot of health experts have, because they're coming from a place where they're dealing with clients every single day. So they know exactly their target audience. They know exactly what their pain points are, what their frustrations are, what their desires are. And a lot of like quote unquote internet marketers who are just developing a business without really coming from that background of sitting across the table from someone miss that data, miss that knowledge. And I think that's a huge value add for people coming from the health space into an online platform to really connect with people, because they've been connecting with in real life for so long.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know their pain far deeper when you see someone and you talk to them in person, and you get to hear their pain and struggle. And so you're not just guessing when you're creating something, online. Like, oh, I think this is what they want. You know what they want. You've seen it. It's a common thing that you've seen. So what would you say now are some of the most common things that are making people feel like they don't have energy? Like, they wake up and they're just feeling lethargic. They're feeling tired. They're not sure why. They're eating pretty good. They're getting adequate amount of sleep, 7+ hours, or hopefully that's adequate. We'll let you chime in on that.
Yeah.
And, they think they're doing everything predominantly right, but they're waking up feeling just like, what is this it? Like, I don't feel good.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's 3 big times of day where people kind of hit a wall. First thing is obviously first thing in the morning, getting out of bed. Not everyone's favorite thing to do, but even when you get out of bed, like, you shouldn't have to rely on coffee to get your day started. I think that's
I'm drinking coffee right now. Here we go.
You know what, Andrew? There's nothing wrong with coffee. Let me rephrase that. I enjoy the taste of coffee. So just for me, it's a flavor thing, but I drink decaf. I think the problem becomes when people, it's almost like a cultural paradigm where it's like, oh my God, I need my coffee.
Right.
To get their day. It's like, how does that even make sense, right? It's like, you need a stimulant to feel alive. Like, it's a total disconnect. And that's a big problem that's actually causing more harm than good. So feeling low energy in the morning is obviously the first point where people are just kind of a little bit less than energized. The second time is really after lunch, mid-afternoon, where you either have, as a result of having had a lunch that just makes you feel like you're going to fall into a food coma, or you've hit a point mid-afternoon where your blood sugar starts to drop and you start to feel like a zombie. That's the afternoon lull is a big time when a lot of people start kind of dozing off at their desk, or they're just really in a slump. And then the final phase is really after work, after dinner, or maybe not even after dinner, later in the day. So they've come home from work, they're tired, or maybe they're just not as energized as they want to be. And now they've got to deal with the potential of making dinner, dealing with their kids, thinking about maybe going to work out. And again, if you're just tired and lethargic, you're not really going to want to do any of that stuff. So those are 3 of the big kind of times that we've seen with pretty much, all humans that we've worked with, which is probably the same for most humans on the planet, of those kind of slumps throughout the day.
So what would you say are so those are 3 time periods when we're feeling low. Mm-hmm. What would you say are 3 simple strategies that could really just boost our energy overnight without caffeine or sugar or energy drinks? Or there's just so many now. You go to 7-Eleven, there's an entire wall of energy drinks. It's insane.
So the first thing to realize is, like, think about energy through nourishment instead of stimulation. So instead of relying on Red Bull and caffeine and coffee and all that stuff, which are short-term Band-Aid solutions to a deeper problem, understand that low energy is actually a warning sign that something more potentially severe is happening inside your body that you're not paying attention to. And most people, and that's fine, because most people don't know how their body operates in the first place. So for instance, like when I was younger, I had really low energy for almost a decade. And, I had digestive issues, eczema, asthma. And the low energy was just like, it was, sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night. And I was like, why am I so tired? Having like literally falling asleep on the couch after school, trying to figure out why this was happening. And I didn't realize that low energy was kind of a warning sign that, hey, you should probably pay attention to something because things are about to get worse. And that's kind of what happened when I was 17, where I lost all of my hair to an autoimmune condition in the space of 6 weeks. And it took me about 8 years to figure out that my body was just a little bit too inflamed, a little bit too stressed out from a lot of the junk food that I was eating for most of my life. And when I kind of started to learn about how to clean up my body and how to eat better, my energy just changed, like transformed in the space of about 48 hours. So I went from sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night to about 6 to 7 and waking, just like jumping out of bed. I was like, well, this is novel. This is new to me. So I started to really go down this path and really understood that first and foremost, if you want to have more energy, you have to be eating quality foods. And that sounds like a cliche. So let me go a little bit deeper. And the number one thing anybody can do to have more energy is to specifically drink more greens. And the reason I say that is because not only are you getting more nutrients, micronutrients like vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients into your body, you're also consuming them in a way that's very easy to absorb. So I'm talking about fresh pressed green juices, smoothies made predominantly with vegetables and maybe, a couple fruits to sweeten things up. And the beautiful thing here is that you're getting several servings of vegetables and fruit, which most people don't get enough of in their whole form throughout the day. And that's really the starting line, the foundational blocks for just really good health and feeling great. The second thing that happens when you're drinking more greens is you're giving your body, I'm not going to go into the technical science here, but your blood needs to be slightly alkaline. So every system, every fluid in our body requires a certain pH. So for instance, our stomach needs a very acidic pH to break down and digest protein. Our blood needs a slightly alkaline pH. So it's just a little bit more alkaline than neutral. And when we eat foods that are very common in the North American diet, a lot of, processed junk, sugars, lots of animal protein, lots of carbs, or refined grains, those are very acid forming foods. And they start to really wear down the integrity of things happening in your bloodstream. And essentially all this means is like, if your blood is acidic, it's not able to deliver oxygen to your cells appropriately. And if your cells are not getting oxygen, then your cells cannot produce energy efficiently, because oxygen is kind of like the building block of energy, right? If you try to not breathe for a couple minutes, you'll quickly run out of life. So oxygen is very, very important. And in order for our body to get the oxygen it needs, our blood needs to be slightly alkaline in order for all of that to be transported as it needs to be. So it's kind of like driving on the highway at 2 a.m. where there's very few cars versus driving on the highway during rush hour. And so if your blood is sluggish, you're going to feel sluggish too. So all of that is really corrected by obviously eating quality foods. And when I say quality foods, I'm talking about real foods, right? Found on planet Earth, not made in a plant.
Right. There's a guy, a mentor of mine, his name's Sean Croxton. I was asking him about diets, and there's all, paleo, there's all kinds of, diets. And he's like, mine is just eat real food. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Just eat real food.
Yeah, Sean's a good buddy. He's a good
dude. Oh, great. Yeah, he's here I'm here in San Diego. He's local here. Just eat real food. And if it's from the earth, it's probably good for you. You should probably check it out. Yeah. I was like, I like that. It's a good one. Yeah. So
we try to make things more complicated than it needs to be. Like, it really is that simple, and it's not sexy, and it's not like the latest gimmick, but that's the reality. Like, keep things simple, eat more real foods. If you want more energy, have a juice, have a smoothie. It'll make a big difference.
Yeah. We often look at a box of food, and before I buy it, I'll turn around, look at the ingredients, and there'll be a laundry list of items I've never heard of. It looks like it's like a chemical experiment. If you actually look at what, like, you can't even, it's not, is there any food in this? Like, what am I actually eating? Even if you look at a bag of Doritos, a bag of even Cheez-Its, even if it kind of tricks you when it says, 100% wheat, and you're like, oh, this must be a little bit better. This is like the better option. But when you look at the ingredients, it's a science experiment.
Yeah. And these companies, they know exactly what they're doing. Like, they've done the research. They know exactly what lights up our reward centers in our brain, and they are chemically engineering foods to please those reward centers. And there's a great book on this topic called, I believe it's called Sugar, Fat, and Salt. And it's all about how these food companies use those 3 ingredients to engineer these cocktails of food that make us, it's like Pringles, right? Like once you pop, you can't stop. That's like a perfect tagline for the food industry in general.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like they kind of get you on a continuity program, which is like a recurring base where you have to keep buying it almost, because every time you go to the grocery store, it almost becomes a habit to, I need this, I need to get this. And it's like a habit forming product where you end up buying the same things every time. Okay. So I'm starting to see too your story of like the autoimmune disease is what got you into health and fitness. Is that correct? Like that was your aha moment? Like, I got to change here.
Kind of, yeah. I was very active growing up. So my goal from like when I was really young was to play pro soccer. So I spent all of my teenage years playing and competing at the highest level. And I was really fortunate that I was able to do that professionally for a couple of years in my early 20s. But being fit masked a lot of the health issues that I was having. So, it's like a lot of people think, well, I had a big dinner last night, so I'm going to go run it off this morning. Right? That's a very backwards way of doing things. And so when you live your life like that, like as like Michael Phelps, for instance, the Olympic swimmer for the US, I don't know if he still competes or not, but there's obviously all that news about him eating like just gargantuan amounts of terrible foods just because his body needed that many calories to keep up with all the swimming. And the challenge with that is that we look at food from a very quantitative perspective. So it's like, okay, yeah, he needed 20,000 calories a day, but guess what's not going to happen when he finishes swimming? He's not going to go from eating burgers and French fries and sundaes and pizza to eating a clean diet overnight, right? Those are years of bad habits that take a long time to break. So for me, it was a big realization, and this didn't happen until I was in my mid-20s because I spent, 8 years going through doctor after doctor trying to figure out what was going on. And then at a certain point, I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to live my life and see what happens. And pursued studies in kinesiology, did my undergrad, and still had really no clue about nutrition. And then I came back to school after finishing my professional soccer career and went to study holistic nutrition. And that was when everything changed for me. That was like a huge light bulb moment for me where I was like, wow, I had no idea that these foods that I've been eating for so long were so terrible for my health. And they don't affect everyone in the same way. I'm not saying if you have bread and cheese every day, your hair is going to fall out, but everyone has a weak link. So for some people, that might be skin eruptions, or it might be asthma, or it might be joint issues, or it might be, extreme fatigue. Whatever it is, the problem is that everybody responds slightly differently to the same foods. And that's just part of our, amazing makeup that makes us human. But at the foundation of all of that is really a state of inflammation inside the body. And when that occurs over time, that's a very serious problem that very few people recognize. And that's why I say low energy is a warning sign, because what I've realized about energy is that in the body, it's really a zero-sum game. So for instance, if you have a Thanksgiving dinner, most of us feel pretty tired afterwards, right? It's just like Absolutely. A huge onslaught of food. You don't have enough energy for like a marathon, right? And so it's like if you have 100 units of energy, that dinner takes up, let's say, 85 of them. And all you want to do afterwards is just kind of lay on the couch. And that's part of the problem, is that when your body is low in energy, so let's say it's operating on 15 or 20 of those units on a daily basis, that means that 80% of your body's energy is being used up by something. And in my case, I was having to sleep all the time. I was feeling tired all the time because my body was just fighting all of this inflammation, and my immune system was just going crazy. So it was just like all these internal little wars all over my body throughout my bloodstream that I had no idea about. And my body said, listen, this low energy thing that you're experiencing is our way of saying you should probably pay attention to something that's going on inside. And that's something I've seen time and time again with countless people, with thousands of people that we've been able to help. And I often say how you heal anything is how you heal everything. Because if you want to have more energy, the good thing about that is that the lifestyle changes you're going to make, specifically as it pertains to food, are also going to be the same improvements that are naturally going to lead to losing weight more easily, sleeping better, having better looking skin, preventing most disease. And it's all by doing the same thing. It's not like you have to have a different protocol for losing weight, or a different protocol for preventing heart disease, or a different protocol for other things. It's really, for the most part, the very same kind of root protocol, which is, again, going back to eating real foods, getting rid of the toxic junk out of your body, and really reducing inflammation inside of you.
Can you expand a little bit more on inflammation? Like, where's the inflammation? Is it inside of our stomach? Is it inside of our brain? Where is the inflammation, and how does it occur? How does it grow? What is fueling the inflammation?
Yeah, so I mean, inflammation is really a systemic thing. So think about when you cut your finger with a knife, your body goes through an inflammatory process, which involves redness and swelling to heal that wound, right? So you've got all those white blood cells that come in, the fibrin clots that kind of, bring the wound back and kind of sewing things up. And that's part of the repair process. And thankfully we have that, because if we didn't, we would essentially just bleed out. So that's a good thing in an acute state. But the problem is that chronically, that same process is happening inside our bodies when we eat the wrong foods, when we smoke, when we drink, excessive amounts of alcohol or expose ourselves to environmental toxins. And these inflammation, it's tricky because it's not like you can really see it. These are, blood markers, for instance, like interleukin-6 or various other molecules that you can get tested for that indicate whether there are higher levels of inflammation happening, for instance, in your blood or even at the level of your brain, for instance. We know that fructose and MSG creates an inflammatory response at the hypothalamus, which is the control center, like literally your body's air traffic control, whereby that inflammation severs the communication between, for instance, leptin, which is one of your hunger hormones, that normally tells your brain, hey, I'm full. But when you eat copious amounts of fructose and MSG and other hidden additives in our foods, it's been shown that that inflammation at the hypothalamus severs that connection. So you don't get your brain, even though you're eating copious amounts of food in some cases, your brain doesn't get the message that you're full. And this is how we get a lot of binge eating, or not even binge eating, I should just say eating more than we think we need to, because we just don't have that off switch, because our metabolism, our physiology is so messed up by these inflammatory responses and all these additives in our food supply. So again, think of inflammation as a fire inside your body. Your body is constantly trying to cool down and put out. And that's where your immune system comes in to help kind of keep things at bay. But again, if this war is constantly going on, it's only a matter of time before something breaks down. And it's really important to cool inflammation mostly through food, right? You can do things like eating more plants, right? More green vegetables is a big one. Getting more omega-3 fatty acids into your body, like fish oil, flax oil, algae oils, terrific ways to cool inflammation. You can also look at some really great spices like turmeric. We know that turmeric is probably the most powerful anti-inflammatory compound on the planet. And so when you start to recognize the power of these foods and these compounds, it's really important to look at how we can get more of them in our body, because of the fact that if we can reduce inflammation in the body, all levels of our health is going to improve.
So inflammation, would you say, is a cause of, let's say, unexplained chronic pain in the body?
Absolutely.
And feeling tired and lethargic when you're doing everything right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's also a big culprit as well with weight gain. So, my recent book, The All Day Fat Burning Diet, talked about how, and I've been doing this for a long time, so I've seen a lot of women especially try everything, all the diets, all the exercise programs, and they still can't lose weight. And the reality is that it's not their faults, because they're just doing things they've been told to do. But unfortunately, for instance, excessive amounts of exercise or depriving yourself of good food that actually has a lot of nutrients in it, and stressing about all that, those are all forms of stress on the body. And when your body is stressed out, what happens is your adrenal glands pump out a hormone called cortisol. And cortisol is a signal. When there's too much cortisol in our body, we get a higher inflammatory response. And because inflammation in and of itself is a stressful situation on the body, that in turn creates more cortisol. So it's like this vicious circle. And it's very tough to lose weight if you're in that cycle, because your body, or our body, is really still built on an operating system that Paleolithic ancestors came onto this planet with, which is essentially, if we feel scared, if our body feels threatened, stressed, for instance, it's going to slow things down to conserve energy. So only when your body is able to feel a little bit more free, in the sense that it's not stressed and inflamed and its survival isn't threatened, is it able to say, okay, you know what? We can bring our metabolism back up. We can kind of do things as we need to, and we can start to release some of that stored weight. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but that's still the hard wiring that our brain and our body is still built on. And that's why it's, we're seeing a lot of metabolic problems nowadays, because a lot of the things in our environment and our lifestyle are creating so much internal distraction and disruption that our body just doesn't know what to do anymore.
You mentioned cortisol. What are some of the leading causes of cortisol production?
Caffeine. Caffeine's a big one, right? So
as I'm sipping my coffee, I'm okay,
yeah, exactly.
Great. All right, I'll set this down. I won't take 2 sips.
This is why I find it. I feel like I live in the twilight zone sometimes, because when I start talking about coffee, you'll always have people who love coffee who will find like some they'll go into PubMed and find the studies to support why it's good for you, right?
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, that is the sign of an addict, right? Finding research when you would never go into PubMed to support your own addiction. But when you understand what caffeine does, it's like, well, why would you want to have it? So for instance, we have these 2 little walnut-shaped glands on top of our kidneys called the adrenal glands.
Okay.
Anytime we're stressed, they're going to pump out adrenaline. And over time, in a chronic state, they're going to pump out cortisol. Now, cortisol, any hormone in the body is neither good or bad. It's really how much of it is the problem. So too little cortisol becomes a problem. Too much cortisol becomes a problem. Cortisol actually is kind of like it gives our cells like a little bit of a force field to protect us against stress. So that's what cortisol is meant to do. But the problem is that when we're chronically stressed out, as many of us are in today's crazy world, right, that becomes an issue, because with chronically elevated cortisol levels, we know that cortisol, for instance, is heavily linked to abdominal fat. There's actually more cortisol receptors in the abdomen, and especially in men. And that becomes a very big challenge for men as you start to age, in your 30s and 40s, starting to pack on those extra couple pounds in your waist. You're like, well, where did that come from? So stress plays a part in that. And stress, when I talk about stress, I could be talking about like emotional stress. We could be talking about physical stress in terms of like how you're moving your body. If you're like killing yourself in the gym 7 days a week, it could be the foods that you're eating. Because again, if you're eating lots of sugar, lots of crap foods, those are stressors on your body. Anything that puts your body out of its state of balance, known as homeostasis, is going to be perceived as a state of threat or stress. And thus your adrenal glands will pump out cortisol. Then add in some caffeine on top of that, add in some sugar on top of that. Those are, again, stimulants, right? And stimulants are going to stimulate the adrenal glands to pump out more of those hormones. And then it just goes on and on and on. And over time, they wear down, and you can get into something called adrenal fatigue, where you don't even produce enough cortisol anymore. So then you feel exhausted all the time because your body can't even keep up with the demands of your life. And that's how this whole thing kind of, comes full circle. When you're having a tough time waking up in the morning, we could have an adrenal thing going on.
So I'm seeing inflammation. We want to reduce the inflammation in the body, reduce cortisol in the body for the most part, since we're probably pumping out so much in our stressful lives. And this combination could then double our energy.
That's part of it. I mean, the hormonal component is really important. And I think when you combine that, or that's really kind of a byproduct of eating better quality foods, getting more greens in, adding more plant-based foods in, getting the adequate rest your body needs, 7 to 9 hours a night is ideal. Going to bed before about 10:30 is even better, because the earlier you go to bed, the more time you spend in deep sleep. And deep sleep is where your body really restores itself. That's where all the growth hormone is released. And even if you get 7 to 9 hours, but you go to bed at 2 a.m, the research shows that you spend very little time in deep sleep. You actually spend most of your time in REM, which is not very restorative. So going to bed before 10:30, 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and ideally trying to maintain the same sleep-wake schedule every day is really important for maintaining a healthy circadian rhythm. So in theory, it's easy. And obviously there's stuff that happens in life that kind of throws us off a little bit. But if you can think about, can I set up a schedule where I go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, more or less? That'll go a huge, that in and of itself, that one thing can be the biggest, most impactful thing you do for the health of your metabolism, and thus your energy and everything else out of pretty much anything else you could do.
Okay. So I'm really starting to feel how all of these things come together, like you said, full circle, and how all of this together would help us feel better, feel more alive. We'd have more energy Now, what would you say are some of the most common mistakes, like do's and don'ts, that people make when they're trying to improve the quality of their diet, the quality of their sleep, or even exercise?
Yeah, I think obviously we talked about caffeine and sugar. Those are two big things you want to avoid. You want to really minimize, avoid the allergenic foods, right? So these are like gluten, dairy, corn, soy, the most common ones, right? And it's not like approaching this from a, oh my God, I can never have anything to eat perspective, because there's tons of stuff you can eat. But understand that those foods really weigh down on your body, not necessarily from a weight perspective, although they do tend to increase weight because they are inflammatory, but because of everything that happens, as we talked about, with inflammation and the immune response and all that stuff. So really trying to reduce the consumption of those foods will make you feel a lot better, and you'll look a lot better as well. So we know that gluten and dairy are correlated with all sorts of like skin issues and all sorts of other stuff. So probably best to avoid those. The other thing is really understanding that there's a balance between how much exercise you want to really, put into your life. So exercise movement is very important. If you want to feel more energized, go for a walk, right? Go for a brisk walk or a quick jump on the trampoline, or just get your blood flowing, get your body huffing and puffing for a couple minutes. That will instantly help you feel energized. But like with the hormones, there's a spectrum. Too little exercise is obviously not good. Too much becomes a big risk factor, not only for injury, but also just for killing your body. Exercise is a form of stress. So think about what exercise is doing on the adrenals. When you add in everything else that's happening in life, and then you start doing crazy exercise, let's say CrossFit 7 days a week, that's a cocktail for disaster. So you want to find, my recommendation is really finding the minimum effective dose. I really believe that less is more. And the reason I say this is because having played pro soccer and having worked for 7 years as a strength coach for hundreds of elite athletes and several pro athletes, I've seen what too much intense exercise does to the human body. And it's the same thing that driving your car 1,000,000 miles will do. It's a simple wear and tear. And that's why most pro athletes don't last beyond 35. And if they do, they look like they're 45 years old. It weathers the body. There's a lot of free radical damage that happens. So you need to find that balance. And for most people, for the active, so the average person who just wants to stay healthy and active, we're looking at maybe 4 20 to 30 minute workouts a week. And the rest, think about being mobile and moving, but not necessarily being like a gym rat, like 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, unless that's your thing and your body can handle it. But over time, eventually, your body will rebel. So you can do things like you can go for a walk, you can kayak, you can rock climb, you can do all sorts of cool stuff to stay active. But in terms of focused, hardcore strength workouts, 3 to 4 per week is more than enough. And please don't overdo the cardio, especially women. Obviously, we're speaking to men here for the most part. Women make a huge mistake with doing way too much cardio when they want to lose weight, but also feeling more energized, because it just depresses thyroid function and compromises all sorts of stuff. So those are a couple of the kind of the common mistakes that I see people make. And obviously the reliance on pick-me-up energy drinks is a big one as well. So those are a few of the big ones.
Really good, really good. And so would you recommend more weightlifting? Because I think men also do the same thing when they're trying to lose weight. That means I need to run more if I want to lose weight and get more cut and look like Bruce Lee or something. Then you recommend more weight training. What would you recommend there to lose weight?
Yeah, it's the same for men and women. I mean, your metabolism, your basal metabolic rate, so that's the number of calories your body burns, even if you just laid in bed all day, is responsible for 75% of the calories you burn every day. So an exercise session will only account for about 10 to 15% of your caloric expenditure, which is really not a lot. So it makes sense to focus on the big piece of the pie. Now, your basal metabolic rate is largely determined by your muscle mass. So if you have 2 people, both 200 pounds, this is commonly seen actually in football players. You have a 200-pound linebacker, or I don't even know the positions properly. That tells you how much you know about football. But you've got 2 players that are 200 pounds. One of them is 30% body fat. The other one's 10% body fat. The one with 10% body fat is naturally going to have a higher basal metabolic rate because he has more muscle mass, more lean mass. And that's just a simple physiological function. Muscle has more mitochondria, which are the engines, the powerhouses that produce energy, way more than fat does. So if you want to stay lean and burn fat, you need to focus on really building muscle, and not to the degree of a bodybuilder, but really focus on strength. Focus on heavy lifts, fewer repetitions, and you can combine that with, some strategic circuit workouts where you have, for instance, a couple exercises that are paired back to back to back with little rest in between. So you're doing big movements and you're getting a lot of muscle involved. So you're getting a cardio workout because you're huffing and puffing at the same time, and you're getting your entire body going, and you can get an amazing workout in like 20 minutes. So you don't need to do an hour of weights, an hour of cardio. But if your goal is to stay lean and strong, that's generally the approach that I would take. If you're looking to build muscle and become a bodybuilder, that's a very different, discussion. But for the average person who just wants to look and feel awesome, 20 to 30 minute workouts, focus on strength. So heavier weights, lower repetitions, and I'm talking about, 3 to 8 repetitions is really going to be the key to helping you maintain a healthy metabolism in the long run.
Wow. This has been very helpful, I think, for all of us here listening. We've not only just learned how to double our energy, we've also learned how to get in shape and look sexy and awesome and feel amazing. So this is really great, Yuri. And so I want to dive now into the knowledge round. Just going to ask you a few rapid fire questions here to get more insight into what you got inside that mind.
Bring it.
All right, Yuri. If you're tired of living the mundane day-to-day and just the daily grind and want to experience more joy and fulfillment in your life, then check out my live weekly talks and open Q&A with the community where I share my biggest insights on becoming the most powerful version of yourself to rise above mediocrity and create the life you desire. Register for the next upcoming event at kfmlive.com. Again, that's kfmlive.com. And hurry up before all the spots are taken. Hope to see you there. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. The first question I have for you is, all right, so we talked about smoothies. How many smoothies per day would you recommend? 1, 2, 3?
I think 1 is fine. I mean, just keep it simple, right? If you're lazy like I am and you just don't want to make any food in the kitchen, just be like, okay, I'm going to make a smoothie. It's going to have a liter of smoothie goodness, and I'll just drink that smoothie for a couple hours. You can do a smoothie cleanse or a smoothie thing. Like you can do, there's really no right or wrong way to do it. If you just want to have smoothies all day, you can do it. But I would say for the most part, 1 is more than enough.
What's your favorite smoothie recipe?
I think a good one for starters, a green smoothie recipe would be any kind of green leafy vegetable, so like kale, Swiss chard, spinach as your base, cilantro, 1 apple, 1 pear, 1 banana, and the juice of 1 lime, and then just fill that up with about 3 cups to 4 cups of water. And then you can throw in some hemp seeds if you want for some added protein. And that's a really good green smoothie. And the reason I say for a good transition or beginner smoothie is because it has a little bit more fruit. So it's not as harsh as a greens only type of smoothie. And it's a really, really nice way to get a lot of great vegetables and fruit in, and it tastes really good.
Is kale poisonous?
Not at all.
Okay, great.
No, not at all.
I've read some things. Okay, in smoothies versus juicing, pros and cons.
Yeah, so juicing is amazing because it removes the fiber. And so what that means is that you get immediate access to those really deep-seated nutrients that can sometimes be locked up in the fiber. So that's from just like if you're looking at the biggest bang for your nutritional buck, a green juice is like rocket fuel. Now, it doesn't contain the fiber, so you have to be very careful only to be drinking vegetable juices. If you're drinking juices that are like, cantaloupe and watermelon and apples, you're basically drinking Coke in terms of the amount of sugar coming into your body. So focus on the veggies.
That's big. Yeah. You look at a lot of these juice shops and that's what they are. It's a lot of fruit based juices that taste great, but and you think you're helping your body because it's, healthy. It's jerf, right? It's real food, but too much can still damage your body. Thank you for that. And okay. So what's your take on supplements?
Supplements, I think, I think they can be very valuable in a lot of cases, especially where people most of us have deficiencies at some level. If you're taking a multivitamin, try to get a whole food-based multivitamin. So a multivitamin that comes from whole foods, not the store, but is actually made from real food. And a simple way to look at that is if you look at the back of the ingredient list, and it'll say, for instance, like vitamin C from citrus fruit or from acerola cherries instead of as ascorbic acid. So a lot of, and usually on the front of the label, it'll say like a whole food based multivitamin. That's a really important thing to look for. It's obviously very overwhelming. There's a lot of different supplement companies and a lot of different claims and all sorts of different things, which is very confusing.
It's getting out of hand, yeah.
But I think, at the base, a good whole food multivitamin can be helpful. I personally just use fish oil, probiotic, and digestive enzymes. Those are pretty much like my staples. And then I have my own greens powder that we've developed that I use as well. But those are kind of like supplementally the three things that I go to on a daily basis.
And what are your thoughts on protein powder? And if we should be using this, which one would you recommend?
I think protein powder is great, but it's misunderstood. Most people believe they need way more protein than they actually need. And you don't need as much as you think you do. So don't worry about like especially for guys working out, like they're like chugging protein shakes between every rep. It's like, chill out.
Right.
I'm not a huge fan of whey protein just because it's allergenic and problematic for a lot of people. And I personally really enjoy pea protein. Pea protein is actually the same amino acid profile as whey protein. And it's very bioavailable, very absorbable in the body and without all the allergenic stuff. It also has a very, very high level of branched chain amino acids. So for guys, obviously really important for, kind of maintaining and building muscle. And it can taste good if it's obviously formulated properly. We actually have one of our own. It's called pure plant protein. So that's basically, it's like a chocolate flavored, kind of like it tastes like a chocolate milkshake, but it doesn't matter if you use ours or any others. But I like pea protein because it's a very complete protein. Hemp protein, some of the other vegetarian proteins are good, but there's taste issues. They're not as complete from an amino acid profile as pea is. So that's kind of my favorite is pea protein.
I like that. And let's talk about meat for a second. Does it need to be grass-fed, organic, grass-fed beef or organic chicken? And also, how much meat do we really need to be consuming for the average male?
Yeah, in a perfect world, all of our food would be organic and like non-GMO and grass-fed and grass-finished and all that stuff, and that'd be awesome. And I think it is important because we do want to reduce the toxic load on our body, but I think we take it too far sometimes and we almost become orthorexic with this stuff, like really fanatical about this. And I think I've written everything I can say about nutrition in my 2 books, but if I were ever to write another diet book, it would probably be around the topic of like the happiness diet or the belief diet. Basically what this means is like if you believe that the steak that you're eating, even though it's not grass-fed, is terrible for you, then it's going to be bad for your body, right? There's an energetic relationship that we have with our food that if we don't appreciate our food, if we think we're eating a salad, but we're thinking, oh my God, this lettuce was maybe pesticided somewhere, we become fanatical about this stuff. That's a terrible relationship energetically to have with your food. And I think it causes a lot of damage metabolically as well as just the relationship we have with food in general. So I would say it's grass-fed is great. Organic is great. I personally rarely ever eat grass-fed beef because we don't have, it's not really readily available in Toronto where I get my stuff. So I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to freak out about it. I'm just going to live life and do the best I can. And that's the advice I give to anyone. If you have access to grass-fed beef and it's within your budget, go for it. If it's not, don't worry about it. With meat though, just understand that, especially if it's a fattier piece, you're going to have a lot of the toxins kind of held in that fat, in the marble of the meat. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you can get a better quality meat, it's going to be a little bit better for you. Meat consumption in general, animal products in general, I'd say I'm a big believer in eating more plant foods. I'm not a vegetarian or vegan, but I really believe that 75% of our diet should be plant-based. So if you're having meat, that's fine. If you're having meat a couple times a week, totally cool. Whenever you're having meat, just balance it out with vegetables. So if you're having meat every single day, you got to balance that bad boy out with some veggies. Because again, as we talked about earlier, that acid-base balance in our blood is very important. And when you eat a lot of protein, it skews towards more acidic. So you want to just kind of bear that in mind. And again, we don't need as much protein as we think we do. But again, without being fanatical about it, just enjoy whatever food you're eating.
I like it. I mean, that book you just talked about would be a hit. I think there's so much pressure on us. Ooh, organic, grass-fed, we feel bad. And it's like, I think I do feel that there is that mind-body kind of connection between the food. And if we don't like the food we eat, then we're going to feel bad about it. And our body has that power to make us feel like we're not actually doing good to the body.
Yep.
Now, let's briefly, I don't even need to ask alcohol, like, is this bad for you? But if someone is going to consume alcohol, which type of alcohol would you recommend? And which alcohols would you say we should really avoid at all costs? Like beers, wines, like whiskeys, like stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, from a health perspective, like there's really only a benefit to having a little bit of red wine, right? Like there's really not much other benefit to alcohol than the antioxidants in red wine, which you can also get from eating blueberries. But if you had to drink, go with a glass of red wine. It's somewhat cardioprotective, but that's about it. Like there's really no redeeming qualities for beer, scotch, whiskeys, other than the fact that you enjoy it. So if you want to enjoy the occasional drink, hey, go for it. It's all good. But the occasional drink is not like one bottle every day. So let's put things into perspective. Like maybe 1 to 2 drinks a week is plenty.
Yeah, it's gotten out of hand.
Yeah.
All right. And what would you say are 2 or 3 of your most influential books that have helped you on your journey?
That's a good question. I mean, I've read so many books and I can't even remember half of the titles.
It doesn't even have to be about health. It could be even just about your journey with what you do and as an influencer and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think for me, most of the books that really impact my life have nothing to do with health. They're more about kind of personal development. So I'm a huge fan. Tony Robbins obviously was a big mentor for me in my early 20s. Learning a lot of his stuff was really powerful. Mm-hmm. Also recently, like getting into a lot of Esther and Jerry Hicks, like the whole Abraham Hicks thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they're absolutely incredible. Just a lot of the law of attraction stuff. And that's been a big eye opener for some of my kind of paradigms that I've had obviously since I've been on this planet. And what else? What else is really another good one? I think just like Think and Grow Rich is a classic as well. Or like actually, I'm not going to say Think and Grow Rich. I'm going to say Psycho-Cybernetics.
Maxwell Maltz.
Psycho-Cybernetics is a really good book because it's really about how you see yourself in the world. And your whole self-image is very, very important. And that goes to health, to business, to relationships, to anything. Really good read.
Yeah, really good books. And yeah, for all the listeners, I highly recommend Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. And so this question here is more of a scenario for you, Yuri. Imagine that you had 60 seconds with your 25-year-old self. If you can picture where he's at personally, professionally, and financially, and you could sit down with him right now for 60 seconds, what would you tell him to do? And what would you tell him not to do?
Well, the most important thing I would say would be everything I read. Like the Jamaicans saying, like, everything is all right. And just have faith that whatever it is you're stressing about is taking place as it should. Mm. It's a very reassuring idea because, for a lot of us who want to control everything, relinquishing control and just being okay with what is, I guess, not our nature, but it's one of the most important things that I've learned over the last couple of years. And that's probably what I would say to my younger self.
Yeah. Would you say this is a part of your philosophy on life and success?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, I've had a lot of ups and downs and experiences in my life. And I mean, basically the way I see it is like everything happens for you. And if you look at every single thing that happens in your life is happening for you, not to you. And if you just kind of switch the meaning you give certain situations or all situations to be more empowering, it's like, wow, I'm so happy that happened because now I'm me as a result of that. Or, something better came about because of that incident, which at the time I thought was bad, but has actually turned out to be really good. So just understand that there's, there's people, there's powers, there's universal energy looking out for you, and it's all for your greater good.
Yeah, that's very profound. I love that. I forget which book it was, but it was talking about how through chaos is where your life is transformed. It's where beauty is found. And it talks about swamps, how swamps are probably, one of the ugliest, it's just not a beautiful scene. It's just a swamp. It's nasty sludge. It's the animals there. It's not a pretty scene, but in swamps, a lotus can grow from a swamp. And a lotus is one of the most beautiful flowers on the planet. Mm-hmm. And it can only be found in a swamp.
Yep. It's great. It's very true. I mean, we need that contrast in life, right? Like without darkness, you don't have light, right? Without colds, you don't appreciate the heat. You know, I have a cousin who lives in Australia. She grew up on the beach and she never goes to the ocean. You know, it's like anytime I'm close to the ocean, I'm in the beach, I'm in the ocean all day long because I have that contrast of not having the beach, you know, for most of the year. So just being able to appreciate that contrast and understand out of that contrast is really where you start to identify what it is you want in your life. It's pretty powerful.
Very powerful. All right, Yuri, this has been a fantastic episode here, full of knowledge. I feel like I've gotten a great just cheat sheet to health and more energy and vitality in my life just from talking to you here. I know my audience can't wait to put these ideas into practice. So that's going to conclude the knowledge round there, Yuri. And I'm curious, what's exciting you now today? What's really getting you out of bed in the morning?
I'm excited. Actually, I'm taking 2 months off as a sabbatical this summer. So
nice.
It's like I've never really taken a sabbatical from anything. So it's the first time in my life that I'm completely disconnecting from everything. And I'm just literally going to do nothing.
Wow.
But be like extremely active just have fun. Like I love spending time in Toronto in the summer and just play with my kids, play outdoors, kind of chill, take my dogs for walks and not have to think about anything unless it just kind of comes into my head. And it's gonna be a challenge because of you know I'm always like doing stuff, but it's gonna be really cool. Yeah.
Wow. So is it a staycation type of sabbatical? Or are you traveling? Do you have plans?
Yeah, it's a staycation. I mean, I love Toronto in the summertime. It's amazing. So I'm gonna be totally enjoying everything that we have around us and loving it.
Wow, I'm glad I got you before your sabbatical. All right, and for all the listeners here, please follow up with Yuri Elkaim. You can go to his website, Yuri Elkaim. It's ELKAIM.com, and then Yuri, YURI.
Yep.
And just Google it. Just go to Google. It pops right up. And you can also go to Amazon and type in his name. You'll get access to his Amazon author profile, which you can see all of his books, which we've actually been mentioning throughout this episode. And they got great reviews, guys. Hundreds of reviews, 4.5 stars. The all-day fat-burning diet, the all-day energy diet. I mean, he's got a ton here. I'm like scrolling through. There's a ton of good work here by Yuri. Please check him out. Amazon, go to Google, check out his site. We've mentioned a few things that you can follow up with him back on the site. And Yuri, again, thank you so much for a fantastic episode full of wealth and information about living healthier lives.
It's been a pleasure, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and millions of downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we're just getting started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a helpful review in iTunes because it really helps the podcast grow so we can impact even more men in the world who need this. Guys, this is all about living with purpose, where every day you only do things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. And always remember, love the life you have while creating the life of your dreams. Go to kfmfree.com to get a surprise bonus I've made for my listeners. Again, that's kfmfree.com for something that's changed my life, and I'm offering it to you for free. Also, check out my Amazon best-selling books that I've written for you to help you crush life at kfmauthor.com. Again, that's kfmauthor.com to see all the books I've created to help you break through in life. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, founder of knowledgeformen.com, and I'll see you in the next episode.